Yo, yo, mic check, 1, 2, Sparky Coach, Poddy, Crowie here, minus Cam. I can only assume he's tucking into some vanilla slice somewhere. Where is he? Follow the bakery trail. We've specifically geotagged his car, so we know. I reckon he's at the bakery. I reckon I know what one. And shout out to Cubby making the finest cookies the Northern Rivers has to offer. The caramel one to die for. But I've got a bit of a journey to take you guys on today, and wherever you're listening in the car, in your high ace, in your eye load, it's all irrelevant. It's all the same thing. We are all one. We are all Sparkies. We are all aircon mechanics, or we are all, to a lesser extent, we'll accept the solar people because, we care about the environment. Of course we do. But got sort of to share with you guys sort of lessons I've learned in business along the way. So a bit about my story. I started my electrical business in 2007. So what I went to school, obviously, finished my HSE at the time, which I don't know what it's called now. I'm assuming it's a similar thing. Went okay, but was one of those people that probably wasn't fulfilling any potential. Just maybe didn't care. Maybe I was surfing too much. Maybe a bit of column A, a bit of column B kind of thing. And then had a year off, had a gap year where I was like working as my dad was an accountant. So, it was funny reflecting back on that time because it was kind of one of those times when, if you're dumb, you get a trade, and if you're smart, you go to uni. That's just the era. I'm 39, almost 40. Gee, that feels weird to say a little bit, but an 84 baby and two older brothers. So I was almost in that sort of, generation above, you might say. Grew up on the Super Nintendo, that kind of vibes. And anyway, so it was like, what do I do? Felt like I was pretty switched on with numbers, and I could definitely, at that point in time, my people skills were probably left a little bit to be desired as any maybe 18-year-old. And so I had a gap year where I was working at CGU Insurance doing like data entry, and that was not for me. Like starting at 8:30 and working till 5 in the city, and so getting on the train at 7 and getting home at 6:37, I was like, this sucks. There's no daylight outside of these hours, and so kind of quit that. Then I went into the classic, let's surf in the day and deliver pizzas, right? So I was like full Domino's Lord. It's so funny to look back on. We preach pretty hard at Sparky Coach about setting a good company culture and about being a leader that someone wants to follow and about being diligent, having hard conversations with your staff member. So I was this like disheveled sort of 18-year-old kid at the pizza shop, just wanted to earn some money, getting some good tips, and working at night time so I could sort of surf in the day. I was mad bodyboarder, so frothed on the berg, specifically the reef breaks around Cronulla and the South Coast. Those who know, and you'll know exactly sort of what I'm talking about there. But so I was like frothing on the berg, and anyway, so I remember this guy like pinning me in this conversation in like the most awkward time, going like, Crowie, we're seeing you part of the future, part of the furniture. I'm like working 3 days a week as a pizza delivery guy, and this guy's like pitching the vision of Domino's to me, telling me about like the future and the hierarchy and this and that. And it was so funny to look back on because I was like smiling and nodding, but I was like really really just like not interested in anything that guy had to say. So whenever you're talking to an 18-year-old kid, please remember what you were like as an 18-year-old kid. So often you're projecting your sort of 30-year-old self or 35-year-old self or 40-year-old self on this 18-year-old. Like, they just don't get it. So, okay, well, I'm pretty positive that a lot of people don't get it at 18. Can we lead them in a way that they understand it? Of course, that's the goal. So anyway, I was working there, and then I was a bit of a rogue character. I kind of don't love talking about myself at 18 because it's like, I felt like I was lost. And I ended up, like, to be completely honest, losing my license drink driving. And that was a big moment for me. Like, I remember walking in to tell my dad it was just such an awful thing. And to be completely honest, I was probably pretty lucky at that stage. We were a bit rogue and doing some rogue things. And I just remember going in to tell my dad, and I like cried, and dad was like, what have you done? And I'm like, I don't know. And then it was such an awful experience, but in some ways, like, that was, that kicked me into gear, and I was like, I need to get my life together. Like, I don't like the direction of my life's going. I don't actually even really like who I'm becoming, and I'm going to sort of get back on get back on the track, so to speak, and kind of whether that's off the rails or not or whatever. But I'm getting my life back, and a bunch of my mates were getting into the apprenticeship world, so landscaping at the time, and a couple more doing some Sparky courses. And I was always really good mates with the people in the year below me, so because I was a bit younger for my year, and they were my surfing buddies. And anyway, I knew they were getting trades. I'm like, if I get a trade, I will finish it because they're in it. So I was kind of like, let's get back on track together. Let's do it together. So I started my aircon apprenticeship. I applied for an electrical job, but it was an aircon company. Shout out to RJ Air in the south of Sydney, and still great mates with pretty much everyone there. And there was such an incredible, like looking back, it was such an incredible company to be a part of. Like I learned from Ian, who was top notch, fantastic. And shout out to Dennis if you ever listen to this. Love those guys. Taught me pretty much everything I know. And still to this day, as someone like this is 20 years down the track, still to this day, someone I could call, whether it was the boss, Dave, or Ronnie's dad, or Ian or Dennis, people I could call and be like, how are you? And then we just have a chat for an hour. So top guys. And looking back, applied for electrical trade because I felt like that was a smarter thing to do, and sat there in this interview getting asked these questions, and classic 18-year-old kid getting asked questions. I'm like, I'll just do it for the company, anything you need, I'll do it. I'll sweep floors, I'll do this. And I had like, there's kids that have sort of farm experience driving tractors, and their dad's working on cars, and they've got like, they know how to use a spanner. I literally didn't know what a pair of pliers looked like. Like I was that kind of like, I had no idea what was happening, and no trade sense, no sight sense, no skill set. I was like, let's just throw it in there. But I knew deep down that I could learn anything, and I knew I was capable, and I was like, this is what I'm going to do. So set my kind of watch to that, and I was like, let's go. So jumped into the apprenticeship full on, head first, and was a bit of a novice to start with, of course, as a first year, but picked it up. And I remember it about like 4 months in, I'd seen, and we were doing high-end resi aircon at the time. So when I say high-end, I'm not talking about, when people say high-end and that don't really mean high-end, I'm talking like Vaucluse, Point Piper, Mossman, or like Mosman, if you want to be that way inclined. Just like Tamarama on the water, pretty much the sickest homes when VRV was becoming a thing, like individual room control, bulkhead units, reverse angle bar grills, just some real high-end stuff in around some high-end homes, in around some great people. And it was just the most incredible apprenticeship where like, it was excellence first, and it was, you go and get that last screw from the car, like near enough's not good enough. Do you reckon that's okay? Like I remember my boss pulling us all in, Dave, one day, and he's like, just looked unhappy, and he's like, guys, is this okay? Like I was up there on a roof and talking to the client, and the client looked down and saw some cable clippings like on the ground, some red, white, blue, like bit of cable off carts and stuff. And he's like, the client went and got on his knees. This is like a full on, I don't know, except for like Dr. Evil, like he was worth $1 million. Like he was a high profile client getting down on his knees, picking up the cable clippings. And Dave was like, do you reckon that's okay? Like that sucks, right? It's embarrassing. And everyone's like, yeah, that sucks. So it was like a really good indicator of, yeah, you can do the sickest job and of like, the aircon works or the Sparky stuff works or all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, the client walks up, and if the site's not clean, and like that's all they see. End of the day, everyone on earth is expecting the light to turn on, the aircon system to work, all this kind of stuff. What they're not expecting is the customer service, the phone to be answered, you to be always polite, the invoice to always, the carpet to match the drapes, the invoice to match what you said, like the site to be cleaned up, you to be speaking well to the apprentices. They like give them the excellent experience. And I feel like I got a foundational experience at RJ. So anyway, I like any good third-year apprentice, and go with me on this journey. I just thought I was like God's gift to the aircon world. And I'm like, I remember seeing one day doing this install, this double splitty install, like the multi-head unit, and I remember smashing it out with like a couple of crew, and I was sort of leading a team at that. 2.5 to 3 years in, got a van, and I was sort of leading a crew and thought I was absolutely killing it. I remember we finished this job in a day, and the client gave me a check for $7,200, and I'm like, oh man, Dave's earning $7,200, and all I'm getting paid is this, like, I don't know what it was. I think I was on $6 or $7 an hour as a first year. Shout out to my mate Brad Sotto, who was on $4.90 as a first year apprentice back in 2002. Yeah, Braddy, love you, mate. And then, anyway, so I remember like getting, and this is just interesting to reflect. I was looking back at it, going, classic case of, oh, my boss is making all this money off me, and what do I like? What am I doing here? I'm going to start my own business, and I'm going to be driving a boat in no time, like kind of stuff. And I remember, like, I had no idea of, he had 2 office staff. He was paid in the office full time. There's a cost of operations to factor in. There was a warehouse. There was like reputation being built over the last 35 years. There was vans to pay for, staff leave. Like, there's so much going on in the business. And as a young kind of whippersnapper, I had no idea. And I was like, I'm going to do it myself. So, push was coming to shove, and I was finishing my apprenticeship. And I was like, went to Dave's house, and I was like, I think I'm gonna leave. Like, and I actually did a year at Bible college at the time. I was pretty sort of involved in like the church sense. So I was like, I'm gonna take a year off at Bible college, and looking back, like, the people skills you learn and the leadership skills and that kind of stuff in that environment is just, like, I don't know, second to none. Like, you're going to push real hard to do courses that'll teach you some of that stuff. And looking back, I'm so thankful for that journey in my life, because, like, it taught me people, it taught me leadership, it taught me grace, it taught me care, and it taught me, like, task second, people first, which is like fire. I mean, we'll get to one of the points coming up, that the staff are people too. They need to be treated well. So you almost go as far as your ability to deal with people. So really important to get those people skills down pat. Anyway, so I went to Bible college for a year, and then I was like, I'm going to start my own business. Just a proper, just off the cuff rando thought, and went to, just did it. Like, and I think that's part of the appetite of risk. So to run a business, you have to have some kind of appetite for risk, and you've almost got to, I was going to say, have your head in the sand to some extent, but I was down for some hard work. I was down for some nitty gritty kind of stuff, and I was ready and willing to put in what it needed to be. And I remember, like, I went through the aircon course, but I went through the aircon apprenticeship, but I did the electrical course at TAFE, right? So, and shout out to Matty Davis and Cookie for helping me through, and Matt Duker, the prince of, I think you're back in Oz now, but you were in England for a while. Shout out to you guys. You were basically like, those guys carried me through the prac. I had no idea what was happening, because I was only solely aircon focused install, and then they were helping me through the prac at TAFE. And I remember, like, so I basically had a little bit of an idea, but not much idea. And then as I kind of came back out of Bible college, I was like, start my own business. A few of my mates started their building companies at the same time, and they were like, oh, Crowie, come over, you're an electrician. And I was like, yes, sweet. I was like, say yes, figure it out later. Like, I had some idea, but not much. And I just fortunate enough to fall into the right people at the right time. And so that's sort of how I got started. It was a little bit of a whim. And I think if everyone's like, I want to encourage you, like, ask yourself why you got started and how you got started. Was it like an external voice spoke to you in the middle of the night? Was it like the trade gods came down and sent manna from heaven and said something to you? Like, or was it just that burning desire? Or was it the fact that you were simply unemployable? And it's like, you know what, I was always going to work for myself. And unemployable in the nicest sense to yourself. Not saying you're unemployable, but saying that no matter what life threw at you, you were going to work for yourself. And I think that was me in a nutshell. No matter where I sort of landed, I was like, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna work for myself. I'm gonna run a sick company, and I know I can do it. So just that I guess self-assurance / naivety / like lack of understanding / like, let's just go for it. So that's a bit about how I got sort of started. So I ran Crow Electrical in Sydney from 2007 to 2020, and learned a lot of lessons along the way. Some the hard way, in terms of making mistakes, and some the easy way through, learning from other people. And I think there's a bit of both. There's a bit of like arrogance in myself, that some mistakes I feel like I just had to make, and other mistakes I felt like, fire, I should have listened to that person. So I guess as a coach now, so 2007, so 13 years, we grew to a staff of sort of, we started out obviously with me, apprentice, and then the company grew organically through doing a good job. I got signwriting like 4 or 5 years later. My website was behind. We wore t-shirts and short shorts and undies at times, right? It was kind of like a bit of a really good work and really good work for really good people, but there was a lot of back end stuff we could have done a lot better. And then I think you do need a combination of the two things. And so kind of like fell my way through certain times. I ended up getting business coaching at around 2014. This is from someone out of the trade industry. And looking back at that, I was like, that was great. But like what we offer as today is second to none. Like the knowledge of scheduling and staff and site work and workflows and rough in checklists, fit off checklists, handover documents, calculators to calculate your service rate or your call out fee or your small job travel fee or your projects, or recognizing the efficiencies you can handle on projects when you're doing the big jobs. Like it's second to none, the kind of industry experience and like unique understanding and also knowledge that myself and Cam have gained over the years. So it's like, yeah, sold Crow Electrical in 2020 to my first apprentice, actually, Luke, who was an absolute gun. Like the best apprentice probably the best apprentice I saw. Also, shout out to Mikey, who was an incredible apprentice too. Pretty much on par with Luke. I don't know, Luke, how you feel about that, but Mikey was an absolute weapon. You know that too. And anyway, so Luke ended up selling it to Luke, and he took over with his beautiful wife Courtney, and that's sort of the story of me. Moved from Cronulla to Byron, and I get asked a lot like, what made me leave the electrical business. We relocated our family from Cronulla to Byron. And it was one of those things. I remember we were pregnant with Phoenix in like 2017. I say we were pregnant, but like I was part of it. I wasn't carrying him. I was part of the experience originally, if you know what I mean. And I remember sitting in Bangalore pub and just being like, wow, we're going to move here. Like, and Elodie was like, yeah. And that was it. Was the seed got planted in our heart that we were just meant to be in Bangalore. And I had the same experience I had with starting a business, that kind of like, I'm going to start it. I had the same thing with like, I'm going to sell this and start coaching. So it was the same sort of like almost spiritual journey, almost like external, almost like was always going to meant to do this, like that kind of thing. And so came up here and started coaching, worked for Tradie Success Academy, which I had an absolutely awesome experience at. Those guys do some great work and learn a lot. And about a year ago, I started doing my own thing. Same thing, just wanting to work, wanting to like pretty much being unemployable, pretty much knowing that I had what it took to run a company, and started one-on-one coaching. And now I've got like a combination of one-on-one and group coaching. So yeah, I've learned a lot in business, made a lot of mistakes. And would you go with me on my journey as I share with you some life lessons in business?